Hey, we're here with Warren Haynes of Gov't Mule. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Absolutely.
I guess this is the 8th record by a thread, and so many incarnations of the band, and so many things have happened over the course of the eight records. How's it feeling to put out your 8th record?
It feels great to put out an eighth record, and this particular record, I think, feels even better because we just kind of left the studio thinking we really did what we set out to do. And I think the original mission was let's go in with Jorgen Carlson, our new bass player, and capture that spirit, but the new chemistry, but also kind of galvanize that chemistry because he was new at the time, but we knew there was some magic happening. So instead of waiting, we thought, well, let's just go in now and see what happens.
I imagine a guy who enters a band who have been together for so long. It must have been intimidating for Jorgen, and I don't know how much of that you spoke to him about, but he certainly delivers in a very different way from previous bass players, right?
Yeah, he's a very aggressive bass player by nature. He has a very aggressive tone, a very aggressive style. It kind of reminds us of Alan Woody, our original bass player, more so than anybody we've played since Alan passed. And I don't know if we would have been ready for that 8 years ago, but now it's just kind of like a breath of fresh air.
Right. And so listening to the record, I noticed that he does a lot of lines and a lot of stuff up and down. And I guess is it a new energy that he brings to the band?
Yeah, I mean, he's very much his own guy, and his influences are similar to ours, but different in other ways as well. The way he plays with Matt is very unique. Matt plays with Jorgen differently than he played with Andy or with any of the other bass players that we did with the deep end, you know. But I think doing that whole deep end thing with Jack Bruce and John Entwistle and Bootsy Collins and Larry Graham and Chris Squire and all these great bass players kind of helped Matt kind of look at things differently. He plays with everybody differently anyway, but that was a really cathartic experience, I think, in some ways.
Do you find that you have to play a little differently too, based on who's playing bass?
Yeah, I think all of us do, because the whole concept of call and response, which is the origin of improv, is you hear what somebody else does and you respond to that. Right. So in any situation, my playing and everybody else's playing for that matter is going to change just to adapt to what's going on around.
Danny Louie on this record does a lot of neat things, and a lot of it's a different Danny Louie than maybe the last record, in that I find him improvising a lot more, and also there's this break in the first track that's really interesting to me, where it breaks and it's all Danny on either Fender Rhodes or something else. Is he finally totally set in what's going on, and is he a key ingredient now to the Mule picture?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's always been a key ingredient, but his role gets a little larger with each record. Right. Because by his own admission, he doesn't want to dilute the original power trio concept. He wants to add to that, but he doesn't want that spirit to be diminished while adding to it. So in a live format or even in the studio, sometimes he'll play very little if he thinks that's what the part demands. Right. He's playing more and more guitar on the new record, and we're all just learning how to respond to each other and adapt to each other more as each year goes by. But he plays a lot of different instruments, so you know, if we think, okay, well, this song doesn't need to be so keyboard heavy, maybe I'll play guitar, and you know, he plays trumpet. He even plays, you know, drums and bass and stuff. But his role is definitely getting larger in a good way.
You did so much touring with 2 other bands that you were a part of, and I wonder how much of that was brought to bear when you were sequestered in Willie Nelson's studio. Obviously, the Dead and learning all of the Dead's repertoire for that tour, and you learned everything, right? Like I remember reading that you learned,
160 something songs.
that's insane. That's insane.
Yeah, it is.
And then all of the stuff that you do with the brothers, the Allman Brothers band. I mean, how obviously it influences the experience and the stuff that you pull out of jams and just your own playing. But do you think back to any of those moments when you're jamming? I mean, this record was born out of jams, right? And sessions at the studio.
Yeah, I think everything that I do and everything that we do collectively kind of finds its way into what's going to happen next. When we worked with all the bass players on the deep end, that experience influenced what was going to happen after that.
Right.
And so me working with the Allman Brothers or with the Dead will have some sort of influence on Gov't Mule, but in some ways that influence may be that we want to go completely to a different place than either one of those bands would go.
Right.
I feel like when we went in the studio this time, even the songs that I had written in advance, the band had not heard them. So we were able to kind of learn them and build them from the ground floor up. And then 3 or 4 of the songs were actually written in the studio. So it's kind of an old school way of making a record, but it seemed to really work.
Let's talk about the record just a bit from a musical perspective, and then Grady can talk about producing it with us. Broke Down in the Brazos. Billy Gibbons comes to play. How did he show up? I mean, he's from Texas, so.
Well, that was the last song that we wrote and recorded for the album. And when we listened back to it, it just kind of reeked of early ZZ Top nastiness, you know. And so Gordy and I were kind of joking around, you know, we got to get Billy to come in. But then we're like, no, we're serious. We got to get Billy to come in and do this. I've known Billy a long time. Gordy's known him a while as well. So we just thought, let's make it happen, you know. Called him and said, we got a track we really need you on. And we sent it to him, and he's like, yeah, let's make it work. So a few days later, we're in a studio sitting about this far apart, trading guitar licks, and it took the song to a whole nother level.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going. We were trying to figure out. We were calling out who was who, because it gets a little confusing near the end. I mean, at the beginning, I think it's fairly obvious who's who. But
yeah.
As the back and forth progresses, it gets a little less so. But it's a great track.
Well, we made that easier by putting in the credits, Billy Gibbons, badass guitar, right side. So if you're listening on headphones or on a nice stereo, I'm in the left and he's in the right.
Great. Well, now that's a good tip for next time.